Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Glenn, and this is Glenn's Bookshelf. This is my second video, and wanted to just do a short video on a book I finished reading last night for Victober, and that book is Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. In my first video, I talked about the three short books I read for Shorty September, and I had a lot of fun doing that. But none of those three books were books that really wowed me. They were each books I liked to varying degrees, but they really weren't books that just really moved me. And just having finished reading The Tenant of Wildfell Hall last night, I wanted to talk about this book while it's still fresh in my memory. And just to say that this is a fantastic, fabulous read. I finished this book and I just couldn't help feeling this sense of, I was really, really shocked and stunned at how much I like this book and how good just how powerful and just how exquisite the writing of this book is. It's just so tremendous. So I really am thankful I have an opportunity to do a video over a book that I just really loved. And one of the reasons I started sort of following BookTube or different BookTubers was kind of interested in reading some of the classics, and I just had a little bit of exposure when I was an undergraduate in college, and I have kind of periodically added some classical works to my collection, but I just really have not been much of a classics reader. And just over the last year or two, as I have gotten to know different booktubers, it has awakened more of a desire on my part to try and get into some of the classic literature and just have some different reading experiences. And one of the books that was recommended as part of Victober and part of Victorian literature in general were several books by the Bronte sisters. And I just happened to hear, perhaps I saw a video that was talking about this book in particular. And while different Bronte books sort of appealed to me, this one just sort of seemed to have a certain mystery about it that I really was attracted to. Let me, for those of you who aren't familiar with the story, I will summarize it. It's there are sort of two main characters in the story. The book is structured in what I would call kind of a sandwich style. That is, the book starts off from the point of view of one narrator, the man in the story. His name is Gilbert Markham. He is a youngish man, I guess in his 20s, maybe in his late 20s, part of the landed gentry in England, and he is writing to a friend of his. He is writing about developments in his life and in his world, but in particular, the new woman who has moved into the area. She has come to occupy Wildfell Hall with her young son, and he's pretty intrigued by her and kind of attracted to her, but she's very mysterious and just sort of difficult to get to know. She is at first the object of great curiosity by the women in the town, and they make various attempts to get to know her and sort of get her involved in the society of the town, but she seems fairly reluctant. And at some point they develop the community, that is, they sort of kind of turn sort of hostile to her, and the sense is that there become rumors about her that she is something about her is not proper, or something just is sort of in violation of the norms of that culture. Perhaps, being not attached to a man is certainly part of it, and perhaps the fact that there are men suitors who are coming to her home, and it just becomes a lot of, as is typical in a lot of small towns, there's just a lot of gossip about her. But eventually, the young man, Gilbert, does sort of start to win his way into this woman's affections, and her name is Helen Graham. And just as it looks like he's kind of about to sort of break through, she is both sort of attracted to him, but also very reserved and hesitant. After after we have had 15 chapters of Gilbert sort of narrating the story, Gilbert comes into possession. Actually, Helen makes it available to him, makes her diary available to him. And so at that point, we get the next 20 to 25 chapters are plunging us into the story of Helen's life. And so Helen becomes the key narrator, and it tells her story of her looking to get married and ultimately falling in love with a man who her aunt tries to discourage her from marrying, but she's very infatuated with this man, a Mr. Huntington. She marries him, and very quickly she realizes it was a mistake, that Mr. Huntington is not a good quality man. He drinks excessively. He hangs around a poor group of friends, an immoral group of friends, I should say, who spend a lot of their time carousing and gambling and drinking and philandering. Mr. Huntington, ultimately, his name's Arthur Huntington, he cheats on Helen, and Helen stays in the marriage because of the young boy that they have, the child that was born to Helen with Arthur Huntington. But as things sort of progressively worsen in their marriage, Helen plots to escape from the home and from the marriage, largely for the benefit of the son, whom she is worried is already beginning to pick up the language and the bad habits of his father and his friends. But so that part of the story, the introduction to the marriage and just the problems that Helen experiences, and eventually her fleeing the home, where she ultimately ends up in the town where Gilbert lives and residing in this sort of mysterious place called Wildfell Hall that's in some state of disrepair. It's a very large mansion, castle sort of structure, but she only lives in a couple parts of the home that have been sufficiently renovated. So we get the fat middle part of the book is spent on Helen's story, and it's really where the story just really picks up. The first 15 or so chapters that are from the viewpoint of Gilbert and about Gilbert are pretty good reading. I mean, it's somewhat interesting, but it really wasn't. I started reading this maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of got through the first few chapters, and it was fine, but it really wasn't doing a lot for me, and I sort of put it aside. But then with the onset of October and Victober, I decided to go back to it. Very soon got plunged into the large middle part of the book that deals with Helen's story, and that's really where the story just takes off. And her writing is just so great. This is what is meant by great literature, and it's the kind of literature that transports you into the story and into the lives of these characters and into the time and place of 19th century England, and just the way she writes, the nuances, the perceptions she has, the way as the Helen narrator she is able to articulate her feelings and emotions and respond to Arthur, her husband, and her young son, whose also name is Arthur, and to their friends around them. Just the way Anne Bronte writes is just really fantastic. And then finally, towards the end of the book, the final 10 to 12 chapters, we come back to the story of Gilbert. And this part of the book deals with Gilbert's attempt to follow up on what he learns from the diary of Helen and trying to form some sort of relationship with her, even though Helen is still married to Arthur Huntington. And Helen is a very devout, spiritual woman of very high principles. And so the rest of the story kind of fleshes that out as to how Helen, who has kind of fallen in love with Gilbert as well, how they will or will not get together and what will happen to Helen's marriage and how will Helen, I should say, has entered into the community not using her married name. And so there is this mystery about her, and she, in an effort to sort of keep her presence hidden from her estranged husband, she's been very secretive about how she interacts with the community and how long she goes out, things of that nature. So she's really kind of hiding herself, and so part of the story is, will she be able to sort of come out and live a life of full and still be able to provide for her and her son, and how will the relationship between Gilbert and Helen be realized or not. And I was a little afraid after the portion of the book of the diary ended and we came back to Gilbert's narration that this part of the book would just kind of would have a very stereotypical anticlimactic ending. And it wasn't like that at all. The suspense of the book just keeps going, really literally up until the final page or pages of the book. The outcome remains in doubt. And the book really, once they sort of picked up with the diary portion of the book was a real page turner. And there are page turners that are books that are there are books that are very suspenseful, but sometimes something about them, their characters, or just the danger of the situation or something can be a little off-putting. So sometimes books I really like, nevertheless, don't really turn out to be literal page turners. But this book was both a page turner and very suspenseful, and just a real thrilling read. It's the kind of literature that really kind of makes me want to read more books. It really kind of lifted my reading soul, you might say. And even before Victober ends, I wanted to get on and shoot a video and talk about this book and sing its praises. I'm not a very fast reader normally, and so I don't anticipate that I will read another book, another Victorian book this month. I have been reading a book by Anthony Trollope called An Old Man's Love, and it's a somewhat smaller book, so I was hoping I might get through that, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to complete that or not. It's possible that I will. But this book has really sort of elevated my reading consciousness and my interest in Victorian literature. And I really had been looking for something like that really would catch my attention and just sort of reorient me and give me a good jumping off place and a good foundation for reading more classics, and in particular reading more Victorian literature. So again, the book was Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I highly recommend it. And I thank you for watching, and look forward to meeting all of you and talking about books again in the very near future. Thank you.